Hi, good evening. Hope you haven't been waiting long. Do come in, hope you had a good journey. And welcome to the Barracks. Here we are. Don't mind the gate. It all looks a bit scary, but it's not really. Just never took it all down. Came with all the barbed wire. I left it there when we got here, but this is it. This is the Barracks. So it was built in about 1953. It was the Grens Company, so it was where the soldiers were stationed on the border of three countries that don't exist anymore: West Germany, East Germany, and the Czech Republic. It's about 5.5 hectares. Between me owning it and the fall of the Berlin Wall and the reunification of Germany, it's been in private hands. It's been a museum, very briefly, and it was an asylum seeker's home. Now it's mine, and we're trying to make something more beautifully energetic out of it. So I've been here about 5 years now. I started off digging up the ground, planting vegetables, trying to make some of the rooms a bit more livable, and now in the 5th year I've realised that what I really want to do here is to help other people come to terms not just with collapse and climate change, but with how we then help transhumans, the ones that come after us, to rebuild again. So we're almost at the loft. This is where I live. I'll let you go and get settled in. I'm going to go and do a couple of things here, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome again.
So hi everyone, welcome to this inaugural event, the Collapse Laboratory, coming at you from the Barracks. Obviously I'm not at the Barracks at the moment, but we have had many guests there this week, and Ben's been a phenomenal host, getting stuff done at the Barracks, having long conversations, discussing the imminent collapses. And what a timely period to be having this event, Ben, with Europe sweltering under this extended heat wave, Greece and Canada burning, and a lot of other events that remind us, this is real. This is happening now.
Yeah, I saw in the news today. It's pretty grim over there, and yeah, Canada, the view from space of the plumes of smoke. It's worrying. It really is.
It's very worrying, but it's also almost like comforting to find people who are also wanting to discuss and work through those issues. You know, as you and I have a long history, I've been to the Barracks many times. We've had long conversations into the night about many of these topics, and it does help, to get together and talk with people who are thinking about this. And I look forward to hearing from these people in this session today.
It really does. We've got an absolutely fantastic bunch of people here. I went through a bit of an existential crisis with the Barracks. The purpose for the longest time was to warn people that they needed to think, not necessarily to prep, but to mentally prepare. And now that collapse most definitely seems to be upon us, albeit slowly and gradually, I needed to sort of re-establish a connection with what I was actually trying to do. And I think that is very much to look forward now. And some of the people that have been here, all of the people that have been here have been absolutely fantastic. And I'm really honoured that everyone who's chosen to be on the stream today is coming. Got people from all sorts of different places in their life and in their careers, creatives, journalists, radicals. It's wonderful. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to. I don't know what anyone's going to say either. I'm very much looking forward to sort of sitting back and letting you take over and enjoying what everyone's.
We definitely. This is a definite live event. We haven't rehearsed much. Things are going to happen that we're not expecting. And I want to apologize in advance if I mangle anyone's names. I will try and get them right, but that's not guaranteed. And so I guess we can move on then to the first presentation, or the first speaker today. He's someone that's very familiar with the topics that we've been talking about, or the climate change events that are going on. He's written about it. in many different publications. It's Martin Thies. Again, Martin, I apologize if I didn't say that correctly. He's a freelance reporter that's based in Tübingen in Switzerland, I believe that is. Is it? Or Germany?
Southern Germany.
Germany. There we go. And he writes for SZ Magazine, Die Zeit, Stern, and others. He mainly focuses on climate change, and he wrote a book that was in no small part based on the Barracks, which, as Ben is showing there, Endzeitreise. And this book ruined him socially, financially, and psychologically, it seems. His words, not mine. Maybe you can give us some insights into what they mean, Martin, before you do your reading.
I'd just like to welcome you as well. Thanks, great to see you again. You know you're always welcome here. And with that
Thanks
cheerful
for having
thought,
me.
No, thank you. I will remove myself and turn it over to you two. Enjoy.
Yeah, thanks, Sam, for the introduction. Thanks for the invitation. And I have to apologize since English is not my first language and I might be a bit slow and confused in English. I also didn't prepare much.
It's still better than my English, don't worry. I'm Australian, so we don't...
First of all, I would like to show you something. I'm currently in my co-working space. And since we are all looking for answers, I would like to show you what's going on right now while we are speaking, also explaining possible background noises.
Oh, wow. Okay. What's that about?
They are rehearsing, playing some music, folk music. And since we are all looking for answers, how to deal with the crisis, and Ben is always advocating coming together and singing. And
well, that's quite funny because I have a techno festival going on outside my window here in Berlin. So the Love Parade.
Okay, yeah. So that's the more beautiful side of our human lives on Earth. So yeah, I would like to tell you a bit about my book. It's maybe let me explain a bit why I jokingly said it ruined me financially, psychologically, and what was it?
That's
socially.
Psychologically.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really the hardest thing I've done in my life so far, I think. I had to isolate myself quite a bit also during the pandemic. It sort of amplified the isolation and the sense of loneliness sometimes.
Yeah.
And it meant a lot of commitment, and also the topic, the climate crisis, and the collapse of ancient civilizations, and maybe our civilization that we are maybe about to witness sometimes was quite challenging to me, to be honest. But I'm very grateful that I'm able to work with it somehow, and to me it had a positive effect in that sense that I could use it as some kind of material and transform it into something beautiful, I would say, or something that was made with love. And I met many wonderful people that impressed me on this journey I'm about to tell you about. And one of them was Ben. So this is where we come full circle, and I'm glad to be. Should I just start, or would you like to?
Yes. No.
Have a bit of chat?
No, I think we can start, and at the end of this whole live session, we have a Q&A. So then, if people want to ask you questions, they can ask in the chat on the YouTube channel, and we will come to that at the end of the live session. So yeah, feel free. Go ahead.
Great. I don't know how many people are joining us from English-speaking countries, or how many English speakers are joining us. My book has not been translated yet, so I was asked to read something, and I have to do that in German language because it's written in German, of course.
Yeah, that's understandable.
And I would just like to read the first chapter, which is a bit of an intro to this book, Endzeitreise. For the non-German speaking people, Endzeit means the end of times, like end time. I don't know if that's a word. And Zeitreise is time travel, so it's a bit of a word play. And I found this quite. I found the title fits quite well to the content of the book because. Of course, it's reflecting about the possible end of the world as we know it, and at the same time, it jumps back and forth in time, visiting the Mayas and the Incas and the Germany during the Second World War and after. And yeah, and I would like to read the first chapter. The book starts in Alaska, and this is where my journey to the front lines of climate change started. And yeah, the first chapter is about how that happened. It takes place in the year 2016. It was quite a bit before Fridays for Future and regular headlines about climate change. I felt at this time was quite underreported, and to me, this trip to Alaska was a wake call, and this is what this chapter is about. And I got there by accident somehow because one day a photographer called me and he said that a journalist he wanted to travel with became pregnant. It's a woman, obviously, and I was asked to replace her on this trip. So yeah, I joined him, and I found myself in Alaska on the melting permafrost, and I was witnessing and writing about a village inhabited by indigenous people, the Yupik people, that is about to sink and being washed away by the erosion the river causes at this river delta. Yeah, so I will just start to read this. Am Ende. Newtok, Alaska. Ich trete so nah an den Link heran, wie es die weiche Erde erlaubt. Vor mir rauscht der gewaltige Strom, aufgepeitscht von Sturm und Regen der vergangenen Tage. Er drängt in Richtung Beringsee, ist hier im Delta selbst schon fast Meer. Hinter Newtok, eine Ansammlung versackender Blechhütten auf Stelzen. Dort leben Yupik, die indigenen Bewohner dieser Sumpflandschaft. Entlang der steilen Küste klaffen Risse im Grün, Grasbüschel hängen von der Abbruchkante. Die Erde zergeht und der Strom nimmt sie mit sich, Brocken für Brocken, auf Nimmerwiedersehen. Bald stürzen die ersten Hütten ins Wasser. Permafrost. Der dauerhaft gefrorene Boden bedeckt ein Viertel der Landfläche auf der Nordhalbkugel. Seit Tausenden von Jahren sind dort gigantische Mengen CO2 und Methan gespeichert. Eingefrorene Pflanzenreste enthalten bis zu 1600 Gigatonnen Kohlenstoff, etwa doppelt so viel, wie sich in der gesamten Atmosphäre befindet. Noch. Denn das Eis, das zwischen Gestein, Sedimenten und Erde in die Tiefe reicht, hat zu tauen begonnen. Als ich mich nach vorne beuge, sehe ich Rinnsale aus der dunklen Erde treten und in den Ninglick laufen. Ich denke an das Wort Wasser lassen. Das Tauwasser wird Teil des großen, erdumspannenden Baus, das sich immer mehr Land nimmt. Im Boden unter mir erwachen uralte Mikroben zum Leben. Sie zersetzen das organische Material und die Treibhausgase entweichen. Der tauende Permafrost könnte die Welt endgültig über die Schwelle katastrophaler Erhitzung stoßen. Ich stehe auf einer tickenden Zeitbombe. Ich hebe den rechten Fuß und der Boden zieht mir fast die Gummistiefel aus. Mit einem Schmatzen löst sich die Sohle, in ihrem Abdruck sammelt sich Wasser. Es riecht nach Schlickziehen und Scheiße. Alaska habe ich mir anders vorgestellt, so wie ich mir überhaupt alles ganz anders vorgestellt habe. Gegen Mittag verpasse ich Nimos 2. Geburtstag. Jasmina sagt, es sei typisch. Ich sage, wir brauchen Geld. Ein zwischenmenschliches Gerichtsverfahren. Und immer ist es kalt in unserer Kellerwohnung. Wie soll ich Nimo das eines Tages erklären? Wer bist du? Fragt hinter mir jemand auf Englisch. Ich drehe mich um und stehe vor einem drahtigen Juppig-Teenager, der mir bis zur Brust reicht. Er vergräbt die Fäuste in den Ärmeln seines Kapuzenpullovers. Sommerspitzengalaxien krümmen sich in seinem Grübchen. Ich bin Kevin, sagt er. Woher kommst du? Ja, von Deutschland habe er schon mal gehört. Kevin spuckt eine braune Masse neben sich, holt eine silberne Blechdose aus seiner Hosentasche und hält sie mir hin. Der Kautabak ist dunkel und weich wie der Boden unter Nutok. Ich stecke mir einen Batzen hinter die Oberlippe und es schmeckt, als würde ich an einem schmutzigen Stromkabel lutschen. Er nickt zufrieden, als ich das Gesicht verziehe. Wie heißt der Fluss dort, wo du zu Hause bist? Das kommt darauf an, was es heißen soll zu Hause, sage ich. Ich denke zuerst an den Neckar nahe unserer Kellerwohnung in der schwäbischen Provinz, wo wir studiert haben und wegen Nimo auch geblieben sind. Dann denke ich an die Fulda, einen Steinwurf von meiner alten Schule entfernt, und schließlich an die Bauna, ein Flüsslein, das durch Baunatal fließt, am Wohngebiet meines Vaters vorbei und durch Dörfer, bis es in die Fulda übergeht. Welche Fische fangt ihr dort? Fragt Kevin. Was das angeht, weiß ich wenig über meine Heimat. Aber was nützen mir Fische? Jasmin steht darauf, dass ich mir einen richtigen Job suche. Geschichten erzählen, das ist doch nichts. Wir müssten endlich raus aus der kalten Kellerwohnung, leben wie erwachsene Leute. Ich könne doch für die Uni Mitteilungen tippen im Bereich Presse und Öffentlichkeit oder gefrorenes Gemüse ausliefern. Hauptsache geregeltes Einkommen. Als ich klein war, reichte das Ufer bis dort hinten, sagt Kevin und hebt den Arm, bis zur Hälfte des Flusses. Als ich klein war, fror bei uns hinter dem Wohngebiet in Baunatal der Leisesee zu, spätestens im Januar. Gemeinsam schauten wir hinaus. Since I don't know how many people are here who understand German, I maybe try to tell a bit about this chapter, and I don't have to read it all. So in this chapter, the storyteller is standing at this river in Alaska, in the at this river delta, and the permafrost is melting, and the river is washing away the coastline, and there is a village very close to this coastline, and the people, the Yupik people living there, for 20 years they decided to move, but they were not be able to get funding so far. And this is because all the funds that are meant for catastrophes in the US, and maybe this is a problem all over the world, they only pay the people who are already affected by the catastrophe. They are meant for the people who see the catastrophe coming. So they were in this weird dilemma. They knew that to move, but they didn't know how to get money to transplant the village on the other side of the river on a solid volcano stone. And it was also located a bit higher where the two, and they were able to build 5 houses over the course of 20 years, and it costed like 1 million or something. But there were 400 people, and they would have to build like 30 houses. And for me, staying on the coast and seeing the permafrost melting, like literally water running from the wobbly ground to the river, it was kind of a shock to me. And for me, it was a wake-up call to start my journey as a journalist, to ask myself, where we at as a society, as humanity, like what's wrong with us, how did we cause this, how could we get into this position, threatening position, and what to do with it. And I was also terrified for my son and the future generations. Also, of course, afraid of what it might mean for me. But since I became a father a couple of years before, like 2 or 3 years before, I was terrified for my son's future and the future of the coming generations. And for me, this journey started where I visited the nomads in Mongolia, whose animals increasingly die because of extreme winters following extreme hot summers, extremely cold winters following extremely hot summers. So they also, like the people in Alaska, have to change their way of living and leave the place where they used to, which is like the desert, living as nomads, and they had to because when they lose their animals, they lose all of their wealth. Basically, they lose their existence, and so masses of them move to the capital of Ulaanbaatar, and they erect their tents around the city, and it's hundreds of thousands of people living in these tents surrounding the city because they have to change their way of life because of climate change, and they are affected by very small changes in temperature have a very big effect in this place. So this regards deals with the topic of climate migration, the Alaska story, the Mongolia story, migration we have to face in the future. And I was talking to many climate scientists. I visited 85-year-old professor in New York City who was trying to warn the city, and also in the New York City, as a member of the New York City panel on climate change, he advises the city regarding the rising sea levels. But he always feels not look far enough. They are investing in absurdly expensive, high-tech flood barriers that may become useless in some decades time. And for him, it's kind of a metaphor for climate change in general, because we tend to postpone the solution to our problems and make it the future generations' problems. I visited him in New York City, and he was talking about Hurricane Sandy. His name is Klaus Jakob, and he became famous in 2012 because he was said to be the one who predicted Superstorm Sandy that devastated big parts of New York City. He says that that's bullshit because he couldn't predict when something's happened, but indeed he predicted how it was going to happen. So during his research, he created flood maps projecting different scenarios on the city's architecture. And he predicted that in case of such an event, like a Jahrhundertsturm, like a century once in a century event, which is becoming increasingly occurring increasingly often. So a one in a century event is not a one in a century event anymore. And he predicted that in case of such an event, a storm of strength, the underground system of the New York City Metro will flood within 20 minutes, basically leading to a collapse of mobility in the city. And Pete said, "Oh, it's not going to be that bad, and maybe such a storm is not coming anytime soon." And then it happened 1 year after. He presented his flood maps to the metro authority and to the authorities of the city, and they were not so interested in it. So it was interesting to meet him because he was someone who could see it coming, and he's thinking a bit ahead and not just in these short time frames. Politicians and people who want to develop housing and get the cash out and everything. I accompanied some activists as well. I was joining 80-year-old woman from Germany who founded Fridays for Future in their small town, and was very, I was impressed because she was very intelligent, also very radical and fearless. And I joined her to Venice to block cruise ships, and was trying to learn about these people's perspective on the climate crisis, and I was reflecting on their approach to deal with it. And it was also interesting because they were a lot younger than me, and I had always had joining groups. So in the end, I felt I might be better off writing about it, raising awareness about it, and maybe my I could invest my time in the best way possible by doing what I can best, instead of maybe using my body to block something. Yeah, so my travels took me to many different places. I joined people in Rheinland, German region where they were fighting against the coal pit, and trying to defending their villages that were about to be taken from them. I reported about my hometown of Tübingen that is trying to become climate neutral by 2030, which means big transformation within the city, and is causing a lot of discussions and controversy. But it's very interesting to witness this process because they are actually trying to keep the promise the states made by agreeing to the climate goals in Paris. So what the city of Tübingen, where I'm at right now, did was to calculate the amount of CO2 they had to cut in order to meet their part of Paris Agreement. So basically, the city is trying to do what every state should do, every city should do. And to see that this is not so easy, even in one of the richest cities, in one of the richest countries in the world, and what it even means to meet these goals, was on the one hand, of course, it's kind of a hopeful perspective, but on the other hand, it made me feel like it's impossible that the whole world can agree to meet these goals. And so that was the thing I experienced very often, that I was changing between a positive perspective and devastation, and being overwhelmed by what this crisis means. I once wrote about a German TV meteorologist, Özden Terli. He's from ZDF, and he once said something that kind of stuck with me. He said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm in a really bad movie, and I imagine my life to be different than having to deal with this shit." And this I can identify with this quite a bit, because sometimes I wake up and I forgot about all of this, and I start the day and have my coffee, and then I start reading the news, and then I'm back in this space of I don't know, unknown future, devastating events, being overwhelmed by all these events that are taking place at such a great scale, such a big scale that you have to ask yourself how to deal with it, because it's just too much. I can change something going on in my village or my town, but how can I change something that's going on in the world? And the end of my trip as a journalist was like my last station or last stop, so to say, in this book is Ben's Barracks. And I felt that he added a very interesting perspective to all the people I gathered, to the scientists, to the activists, to the people having to move, to the people having to adapt, trying to protect their city against the coming floods. And yeah, I thought Ben has a very radical, I feel Ben has a very radical approach. To me, it's almost like an artistic performance or something like this that shows us how to like one possible way of dealing with the scenarios that are that sound surreal, unreal, impossible, but are based on the best science we have at our hands right now. And what I found interesting about the feedback to his story being printed in Süddeutsche Zeitung magazine and also in this book was that people sometimes took offense in his approach, and felt like I was wondering, why is that? Like, why are people being triggered by what Ben's doing? Because basically he's just taking his decisions, he's living his life, and the people being triggered by his approach, they wanted to have a word, they wanted to have a saying in how he's living his life somehow, and they felt like, he should try to change something, he should do this, should do that, and this is so egoistic. And I always felt that this kind of anger it provoked, it may reflect on us somehow, and that's why I think it's kind of a valuable artistic performance what he's doing, although it's very existential, because it reflects back on our way of life. Because why should I say what he's doing is egoistic? Like, what am I doing? Like, he's at least transforming his 6 acres of land into into fruitful land, land where things like this laboratory can take place. He's doing his bit in transforming the world, so to say. He's doing what he can do, and also maybe ensuring that he might have a future and a couple of people might have a better future in case it hits the fan. Maybe I just a last word, like how I implemented all these different stories I was talking about now. I was trying to think of a way to connect this, and for me the most personal approach to this topic is the life of future generations and what the climate crisis means to them. And so I created an autofictional story, which is between the storyteller and his son, and they are doing a trip to storyteller's hometown, which is my hometown. It's a formerly very wealthy place in the middle of Germany where VW factory is located, and it's like the fairy tale of the German Wirtschaftswunder, the miracle of the economy after the Second World War, just building a lot of cars, make the economy grow, and this shall never end, right? This was supposed to be an infinite way of life, and we are learning now that the world's crises are firing back at us. We caused them, and we no longer separated from them. And also the place where I'm from, because the industry of the German car industry is going downwards. People in my town start going crazy a bit, and they now want to extend the city and take some very rich acres away from the farmers to build more of the city, like to seal the ground, to build more, like they are to answer the recession with growth. So I was taking this city to tell about Germany, the mindset of the Western civilization, about my family history, which is closely linked with the car factory. And on this trip to this city, which is the second chair, like father and son going to the city, the son starts asking questions about climate change because they hear about flood in the radio, and the father wants to ignore it, to deny it. He hopes the son is not going to listen, although he knows he does somehow. And then the son starts to ask questions, and the father decides to answer with stories. And I was trying to make to make the abstract truth of climate change accessible through telling stories, because I feel like that's what I can do. I'm not a scientist, but I can maybe convert it into stories where people can grasp and experience a bit of what climate change really means. I wanted to read something about the Barracks now, but I did half an hour now, and I was supposed to do half an hour. So I would like to close with a last thought, maybe. In Venice, where I was meeting the activists, and it was my first experience with the climate justice movement, and I was impressed by their passion and by their actions. One activist told me the crisis, in the original sense of the Greek word, means a turning point, and this was before Corona, before there was no activism anymore for a long time. But he really felt like this is our Woodstock, this is our 68 kind of movement, and this is a whole generation mobilizing to change the future. And to me, it started to feel like this. This is kind of a turning point. The crisis is a chance to ask myself what is really important to me. I can use it to reevaluate my priorities in life, and maybe a bit similar to Ben Green and his Barracks and Ben's biography. I think in my biography also the idea of having a career in the classical sense became less attractive, maybe because it seems so obsolete and sense and pointless, basically. Not meaning I have an answer of how to deal with this finally, but I feel like I would like to work with it. I would like to connect with people. I would like to develop possible approaches to meet this crisis. And I would be happy to engage in some question and answer and dialogue kind of chat later with you. I don't know, Ben or Sam, do you want me to read a last short bit, or should we just cut it here? Because I don't know, I feel like it doesn't make sense to read in German when many people listening are English speakers. So
yeah, no, I think what you've described is is amazing, and you've captured a lot of people's thoughts and I guess frustrations with your explanation of your book. So let's yeah, and also I think we need to move on to the next segment.
Let's
But
do that.
you know, thank you for that. And I think, like me, there were some comments. You know, it's. I wish I read German. I wish my German extended to be able to read your book. Is there a date for an English translation to come out, or?
I think a couple of thousand people have to buy it first in order to
Okay.
convince some.
Because I want to read it. I love your approach, the storytelling approach. I think that is the one way to really engage and make this feel real and not just a bunch of statistics, right? That scientists are reeling off, is to really hear the stories close up and personal. And I can see how this ruined you psychologically now.
Let's say it made me stronger.
Did you need therapy after it, or was the book, writing the book itself, therapy?
I think everyone can use a good therapy. There's nothing wrong with that.
Because it's very deep, dark topics. I know I go into holes
dark.
when I read too much about it, and yeah.
But
no,
you
it was
know,
really.
I think it's also mandatory to keep your humor, and I think it's quite the humorous approach I chose sometimes, and also if it's dark humor for a dark topic.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
you go
it's a good
crazy
topic for
if you
stand-up
don't.
comedy.
Yeah, you go crazy if you don't keep that mind, because it does depress you. So I have some questions for you, but I'll save them till the Q&A at the end. And yeah, let's move on. So thank you again. Amazing.
Yeah, I hope it was all right.
Reading.
I'm a man of words, so it really, it's painful for me to speak in a foreign language. I get confused, but I hope I could get a bit of an impression.
I think everyone is there with you, and it's totally understandable. And as I said, your English is probably better than most of ours anyway. So so our next thing on the agenda is we're going to have a video from a long-time volunteer at the barracks, and it's going to be starring the actual star residents of the barracks, which we haven't really talked about yet. But Ben has 3 pigs that he rescued from being eaten. I've had the pleasure of meeting them quite a few times, and actually helped build their house and the fences for them. They're amazing creatures. And Ben has put a link onto the YouTube site to a GoFundMe page where you can donate to help him feed the pigs, because they are huge. Like, they're massive. They're enormous, all 3 of them. And it takes a lot to feed them. Ben's trying to get sustainable to be able to generate the food for them, but they require so much that he still needs to buy in food. So we ask you, if you have a couple of dollars, it doesn't have to be a lot, just if you can help donate, and Ben will use that money to go directly into the pigs' bellies and they won't be eaten at any point in time. So yeah, we'll go to that video now, Ben.
So here are the piggies. Hi piggies, you want some snacks? Who wants some corn? Corn? You want some corn? So, that's Sir Anthony Marmalade Nutslet, also known as Tony. That's Marilyn Monroe, because she's so beauty, and that's Brunhilda Demagogue. Want some more? Recording? Yeah. Their favorite fruit is like pumpkin or apples. Also, they also like the nettles and beetroot. Sometimes they get some sunflowers. Yeah. What else? or they love corn, and also some big courgettes from the garden. Yeah. Do you want some pumpkin? Maybe close up.
I don't think I'll ever get tired of listening to them eat. It's a sound that, I don't know, just warms the heart. But yeah, as I said before the video, there's a GoFundMe page to help feed them. You saw, I think they're actually bigger than that video. I'm not sure when that was done, but I feel like they're bigger now. And I've been on many dumpster diving expeditions with Ben to gather food for them, and they just get through it. So they are incredible creatures, and Ben did save them from being sent to the butcher. So yeah, any help is appreciated. Okay, so we move on, and we're going to now talk to another participant in the Collapse Laboratory this week, Ninka from Netherlands. I won't try to say her surname because I screwed it up earlier, I think. Ninka's a theology student based in Amsterdam. She's writing a philosophy of collapse. Very, very interesting. I hope there's an English translation for it. And she's exploring the coming human condition through philosophical thought and her creative work. So maybe Ninka, you can give us a quick intro into who you are and what you're doing.
So, am I clearly understandable? Is the sound
Yes.
okay? Perfect. Thank you for introducing me. Like you said, my name is Nienke van Bergheden. It's a very Dutch surname. So, and yeah, I'm 21 years old, and I have been at the Barracks twice now. I was there last year and this year as well. Last year only for a week, but this summer I spent a good 5 weeks there. So I got a bit more of the experience of what it's like to actually stay there long term. And Ben asked me to write something about my experiences there and my takeaways. So I tried my best, and yeah, I wrote it down here on paper, so I might have to read it from the page.
Okay, no worries. I will let you read that, and I'll come back afterwards once you're finished.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thanks, Ninka.
Okay, so I will first share something about my experience being there for the past week, and then some of my takeaways. So this summer I spent 5 weeks at the Barracks, and one of which I had the honor of being an attendant at the Collapse Laboratory. And this week I spent my time thinking about the inevitability of the collapse and what this means for us and for the coming generations. I spent my time conversing with people from wildly different backgrounds, but we were all motivated by the same genuine concern for the earth and its people, which made it very easy and relaxed to easily get to know people because you had a shared experience there, and for me that was very valuable. And like Sam said, almost comforting to see that there's other people who are concerned about the same things and are interested in sharing that with other people and talking about that extensively. So we discussed so many different topics, stretching from the decline of the human experience into the collapse to the rebuilding afterwards. And it might sound a bit gloomy, but I must say that the overall tone was constructive and, dare I say, sometimes even hopeful. And it was, I must say, it was really interesting and a great pleasure to speak to all these intelligent and well-informed people. And for me, that really made the experience even more worthwhile, to meet all these people and to have such great conversations. And there was so much going on at the laboratory, and people were engaging in different projects and going on many long forest walks, which was also very great. But one of the true joys of this week for me was being in the kitchen a lot. I was quite a terrible cook when I came there. Ben can probably confirm that. But I had the pleasure of being in the kitchen with Jack. He's here, Jack McNulty. He's a renowned vegan chef, and I had the pleasure of cooking and conversing with him. And we used so many Barracks homegrown ingredients. I don't think I've ever had so many cucumbers and courgettes in my life as this summer. But I still like them, so that's a good thing. And despite the challenges of the Barracks kitchen, we cooked quite some delicious food, I think. You can also follow Jack on Substack, the Vegan Weekly. So yeah, now that I've mentioned the joys and pleasures of the week, we can talk about some actual collapse, because we are, after all, not only happy, but also doomers. So this week I experienced a refreshing sense of openness and honesty about the coming collapse. I think it's slightly depressing, but humanity is at a point of demise of its own making, and I believe all of the science makes this pretty clear. And like I said before, it was comforting to talk about that with other people, because in my personal experience, usually when I try to talk about this with friends or even people who are actively engaged in the climate debate, or people from, let's say, like organizations such as Extinction Rebellion or whatever it might be, the idea of an actual collapse that's coming, and that's coming closer and closer, is usually not really appreciated if you talk about it, or even almost ridiculed. But I think it's an honest consideration, and it's important for there to be honest conversation about it. But it does leave us with a question of personal responsibility, and that was one of the things I really found myself thinking about a lot over the last few weeks, but especially during the laboratory itself. Because the idea of not only a coming collapse, but also one that was caused by humanity itself, and something that we're still actively working towards, can be quite paralyzing, and also quite scary, because it really makes you think about your own responsibility and your own actions, which I think is great, but also paralyzing, I would say, is the right word. And I think this point has been kind of used by the fossil fuel industry to make individuals feel guilty and like hypocrites, rather than blaming the system itself. And this was really going on in my head for the past few weeks, so I wrote a bit more about that. I think, or I hope, we are all, for example, aware of the lie of the personal carbon footprint. This is a responsibility that is forced upon the individual by the fossil fuel industry to kind of deflect its own blame and put it on the individual, but it's not a responsibility that is ours to take, I think. I think it paints a picture of people as hypocrites because it gives them a false sense of personal responsibility, which is actually systemic. Because I think that by saying, oh, look, this is your personal carbon footprint, this is all that you are doing wrong, you're kind of hiding the fact that the carbon footprint of the entire Earth is pretty much almost completely caused by the larger industries and the larger systems rather than single individuals. And I think, in a sense, holding them responsible for that footprint is basically saying, look, this is where you're all lacking in living accordingly with your own integrity and your own morality. So I promise not to dwell on the problem of capitalism here for too long, because I think we're all maybe a bit bored of that conversation. But I think that in a system that promotes economic growth over anything else, the ordinary individual cannot be held responsible for the choices made by solely profit-driven corporations. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous, so I kind of need to calm down. But the system paints humanity as hypocritical, but I find this pessimistic and wrong. I think it's a great evil to paint humanity in such a dark light, or such a unfriendly way. Because I believe, or at least I hope, that our humanity and concern for others allows us to kind of transcend the hypocrisy that is imposed on us by larger systems, or that we are in a way forced to partake in because we want to do better and we know that we can take individual action. But at the same time, the major problem is being caused by the larger systems that also rule our daily lives. So it's very paradoxical. And this is what has come to be my understanding of radical authenticity. It's an idea that Ben has often told me about, but I always found it a bit hard to wrap my head around it, because I understood it as living in accordance with your inner morality, but I found this very hard to match with the, in this case, environmental and political injustices that I saw around me. But I feel like over the past few days and talking about it a lot, it has become a bit more clear. I don't know if this is what Ben actually means by it, but it's become my understanding of it. And let's see. Even though I don't yet fully understand it myself or how it plays into the current circumstances, I hope that it will be helpful in further exploration of collapse and rebuilding. Because although we cannot be held individually responsible for the choices that were made for us, I think we must take accountability for how we move forward. Not taking accountability for your current and future actions simply because you're not individually responsible for how you got in the situation in the first place is like playing hide and seek with nature. As long as you can't see the one who's seeking you, they can't see you. So it's like, as long as I don't concern myself with my own action, my lack of action can't harm me. So yeah, this has kind of become my understanding of the whole situation over the past few weeks, and especially in conversation with other people at the laboratory. I hope I didn't end it on a pessimistic note. I think it's very important to keep going and keep thinking about these things and articulating them towards other people, but also being honest with ourselves and our own ideas and see if they are still aligned with what we think is right. So yeah, I wanted to say thank you, Ben, for hosting the laboratory and making this all possible. It was very fun and inspiring, and sometimes depressing and sad, but also great, and lots of laughter and lots of cooking and all that good stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You have just articulated all the stuff I bore my friends with for the last few years to the point where they don't want to hear me anymore. But you are much more eloquent in the way that you do it. And I kind of regret not being at the laboratory this week because I can see us talking away into the night. You know, this individual carbon guilt washing that the companies do. Oh my God, don't get me started on that.
Yeah, it's truly terrible, and
Yeah.
I'm happy it like resonates because I feel like it really paralyzes people to put so much blame on them, and I feel like it's also self-imposed blame because it is so hard to act accordingly, especially because the situation is going so fast, like the crisis is just ramping up. So it's difficult, but I think it's important that we keep going with great joy, and also
and that's it's great that you can keep that positivity. Like with Martin, we were talking, you know, you have to keep that positivity because otherwise you just keel over and give up.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I do love what Ben's doing, bringing these people together and particularly these events. So you can kind of draw energy from each other, right? Because as you deplete, someone else comes up and then you can support someone else when they're struggling. So but thank you. Amazing. And I look forward. You'll have to let me know when you're at the Barracks next because I will be there.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I will probably be around next year again. So
yeah, cool.
Looking forward to meeting you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we will move on. I think we are on time-ish. And we have two more guests that we're going to hear from. So the next one I really love because I've looked her up, what she does, and she's someone that talks to a particular passion of mine in terms of what she's trying to address. And her name is the easiest to say out of all these people, so that gives her a gold star as well. But yeah, Michaela Spiegel is going to be talking next. Hi, Michaela.
Hello. Thank you.
And that's okay. And Michaela's an interdisciplinary artist and feminist activist. So you have a byline on your website which just immediately got me, which is the "Let's address the virus of patriarchy" byline. I was like, I'm all over that. But yeah, you have also been involved in the Barracks and known Ben for a while. You are an artist and you practice your art includes studio work, video, writing. You're also the founder of Centre Pompadour in France. And I encourage everyone to look that up because it's amazing. And you're the first and still unique feminine. The Centre Pompadour is still the first and unique feminine artist residency in Europe. So I will let you carry on from there.
Yeah, the Centre Pompadour is a living art project, which I founded. As you said, Sam, I am an artist and a painter and do drawings and videos and have some more than 100 interviews about what is feminism and individual feminism in my collection of asking people what they are up to. And so I founded Centre Pompadour as an artistic discipline, which means I opened up an old house, which I renovated with my own hands. So I know Ben's problems of heating and water and all this stuff very well by my own experience, what it means to move in a place. And I've done this a little bit before him. I've been here for 12 years now. And when I was almost done, so when I could heat the house and had running water, I said, I mean, I'm not going to stay all alone in here. I open it up for like-minded people, which is in my case, feminists. And I have had the great joy to have been to the Barracks as well. And I see a lot of parallels in there. In sharing and in communication simply. And I would like to talk a little bit about ecofeminism, which I think can't be overheard. Ecofeminism as a movement was founded or invented by a French woman in the 70s, by Françoise d'Aubonne, and she wrote a book called Feminism or Death, which means that the stakes of feminism, and citing struggle, was not about equality, but about life and death for humans and the planet. In this wide-ranging manifesto, d'Aubonne first proposed a politics of ecofeminism, the idea that the patriarchal system's claim over women's bodies and the natural world destroys both, and that feminism and environmentalism must bring about a new mutation, an overthrow of not just male power, but the system of power itself. Yeah, the good news is we have to overthrow patriarchy, I think. This is the only climate collapse, the climate of values and the climate of ethics, which has to be overthrown. Because all forms of oppression are interconnected, if it's sexism, racism, class exploitation, or environmental destruction. The patriarchy always uses the same modus operandi: domination, degradation, and destruction. We can compare factory farming to surrogacy pregnancies, for example. I would like to talk a little bit about responsibility, because it was so typical, this helplessness towards responsibility, and how we gender-wise take responsibility, because there's female responsibility and there's male responsibility. And female responsibility in our culture is very much linked to nature, motherhood, and care work. And female responsibility means female defense. The woman is guilty by nature and has to defend herself by nature, whereas the male responsibility is guilty by act, guilty by having committed a crime, or by being discovered to have committed a crime, even worse. So we have to unlearn the binary of guilt, and we have to replace it by solidarity in saving humans and the planet. And here comes in the care revolution. We've had one of the most genius thinkers from Switzerland here writing a book at the Centre Pompidou this summer. Her name is Franziska Schutzbach. She as well writes in German, and I really hope she is very soon going to be translated into the English language. And she writes about the care revolution and says as well some numbers. I cite Franziska Schutzbach. Our worldwide economic system relies on the free care work of women. To cite a number, daily 16 billions of unpaid hours of house and family work are done. 80% are done by women. I mean, if all this would be changed, this would mean a breakdown of all our economical systems worldwide. So to simplify ecofeminism, why do women care and men kill? How can we break up the binary not to identify in these two categories? So if care is the contrary of kill, and both are gender specified, specifically sexualized, we must unlearn masculinity as a politically performative gender role, not as a play role, because playing is always super important. And we have to re-centralize empathy and joy. And I'm not talking about toxic masculinity. I'm talking about masculinity in every form. And this time, this summer, for the first time, I got very, very angry. The Centre Pompadour is sort of a thermometer for feminist waves and thoughts. And this summer, for the first time, the temperature of feminism was the total helplessness of the younger feminists who had been here in front of the question to have a child or not. Years before, it was about abortion and reclaiming their own bodies. And nowadays, and due to the climate collapse, it's the simple question about, can I take the responsibility of motherhood? And this is taking it, I think, a bit too far out of how to continue humanity or not. So, is the private still political or not? The private or the personal is political is the slogan from the 70s, in which one of the first things we discovered that Carol Hanisch, in her times very prominent New York figure of the women's lib. So she said, one of the first things we discover in these groups is that personal problems are political problems. There are no personal solutions at this time. There is only collective action for a collective solution, which I think is as much the same for climate change and collapse. So there are definitions of women and of men, and I don't want to bore you about this all, but I want to get your attention to the technological changes of our times, which are advancements like, for example, we all use our smartphones as primary means of communication, which can lead to self-cult, cut and paste, ChatGPT, etc., which can facilitate communication, which can, especially for women, bring safety in climate-wise collapsing geographical areas, accessibility of knowledge, etc. The other side is the irrealities, the oppression, the competition, etc., which the screen of our phones and computers do create. So without the right education, the private will become surreal. And if the private becomes surreal, we only self-perceive in surreal performance, in self-monitoring, which is going to alienate us from nature and from what is really going on with ourselves as persons and with our surrounding, which creates a lack and deficiency of empathy. And I think empathy is one of the key words we have to learn in this collapsing system of nature and hopefully collapsing system of patriarchy. The lack and deficiency of impact of one's actions. If you only look on the telephone and how many likes and little hearts we get, we will forget what it is to communicate in real life and to help each other. and the lack of this deficiency of emotional support from others, from each other. Nature and nurture. I think spaces like the Barracks, the future, to get together, to exchange, and to be human in the best sense, and to unlearn patriarchal values, to question and to redefine solidarity and identification with all sorts of values, personal, family, planetary values, philosophical values, artistic values, creativity that cuts in and can replace production. Privilege, we have to overthink privilege, we have to overthink meritocracy, charity versus egalitarian redistribution of goods geographically, and as well the privilege of being able to give. Yeah. And last not least, the guilt of ignorance, which plays our trick in history. I mean, after the Second World War, we all wonder about the guilty generation, but we are the guilty generation. And how will our children, if there will be children, react to this guilt? How is our consciousness to the next generation? Of course, the redefinition of property, intellectual, geographical, productive, etc. Create instead of produce. Unvalue gender roles, as I said before, and redefine gendered play roles and make them play roles. Redefine parenthood and revalue motherhood for all genders. Why can't men be mothers? Why can motherhood, well, I think only if men become mothers, motherhood will really have a certain value. And I don't mean it by giving birth, but by being a mother, by being motherly. And unlearn self-harm by competition in a predefined capitalistic patriarchal hierarchy. Create other forms of self-love. Learn to love. Unserious the self from patriarchy and patriarchal norms. Break norms. Yeah, this is more or less all I wanted to say. What the Centre Pompadour, which is a word game, obviously, is thinking about, and how grateful I am to all the residents who come here. And if we can't hold back the collapse, I only hope that we, or not we, but that some future generations are going to break down and emerge from thoughts a few people who do communicate have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michaela. A lot of the themes that you raised link with what Ninka said, which caused what Martin wrote about. But the one thing I wanted to kind of touch on with your not your angle, but your approach was, you know, the patriarchy is essentially the core of the issue, right? And
yeah, of course.
I have really struggled. I'm reading a book called Invisible Women at the moment, which actually you stated an immediate thing out of that book right at the beginning of your talk, which was about the women doing 80% of the work, but it's unpaid.
Yeah.
And I find I've been struggling a lot with the patriarchy, you know, and looking at that and getting angry, but then getting angry at men, which is not constructive, right? So
it's not the same.
Exactly. And so I'm really struggling to, you know, kind of separate those and think of them differently. And what you just said then. Yeah.
The thing is, philosophy has a sex, which is the male sex.
Yeah.
We don't hear female philosophers, or very little. We hear feminists, but feminism, there's still so much important anti-propaganda to feminism, that feminism has to be redefined as a gender overlapping concept of thinking. You know, feminism is not only for women. Feminism is as well for men.
Yeah.
Men suffer in the first place from what patriarchy does to them in the definition of masculinity.
Absolutely.
It's
And a lot
men
of
who suffer in the first place.
Yeah, and a lot of the men out there don't want to be associated with that kind of, you know, culture or definition of a man, right? So, they're struggling as well, and they're trying to understand what's
in
going on
the
as
first
well.
place. So
Yeah.
I definitely think we need all genders on board
Yeah.
in feminism to
Yeah.
fight the patriarchy.
And then, like you said, I think what we're starting to really lack in our society, or not starting to, it's been for a long time, is the empathy, right? Is the empathy for each other,
Empathy.
but the
And for the
empathy
planet.
for the planet, exactly. So, I relate, so much to what you said, and I would love to quiz you on everything, but it's not my Q&A with you. So I think we need to
You have to
move
come to
on.
Centre Pompadour.
I will be there. It's already on my list, don't worry. But thank you again, and I'm sure there will be questions at the end. I'll just remind everyone who is watching that if you put comments in YouTube, they do pop up on our side, and so if you have questions, please pop them in the comments and we will come back to them at the end. So if you want to ask the guests anything, drop it in the comments. So thank you again, and we will move on now to our last presenter, and Aditi. I'm gonna apologize for mangling your name because I'm about to do it. I might just call you Aditi and let you say your last name, but Aditi is a climate journalist from India, working in Southeast Asia and now in Berlin, where she works full-time for Deutsche Welle. That's the public service broadcaster here in Germany, for those that don't know. She first met Ben when she went to visit him on one of the most watched segments of the channel. And above all, she's after a good story, so she's here to tell you her story. So I see Ben's come on as well. So Ben, did you want to say something before Aditi goes into her presentation?
No, actually, Aditi's going to be interviewing me.
Okay.
Myself
Yes,
in as well. But also,
I
couldn't pass up the opportunity while Michaela, I know, can still hear us, to tell her that seconds before Michaela invited you to Centre Pompadour, you had written in the chat to me, "I'm going to Centre Pompadour." So I had to ruin that one for everyone, I'm afraid. But, I thought you two might hit.
Busted. Okay, you can remove me now and get on with your interview.
No,
Hello.
hey, you. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you so much for inviting me to this. I'm not going to make a presentation because you only asked me to do this 2 hours ago. But you very kindly and maybe a bit sadistically invited me to interview you again. I give a little bit of background about how we first met before I start asking some questions. As Sam said, basically Ben and I met earlier this year when I approached you because I was working on this YouTube channel that I work on, and I really wanted to do a piece on the end of the world. And I found you, and I found you super interesting, and I wrote to you, and you actually interviewed me a few times before you let me into the barracks, and that was the hardest I ever had to work to get somebody to talk to me, but it was worth it in the end because it was a really wonderful 2 days, and I think it was especially interesting because and maybe also interesting to this live because I don't really consider myself a doomer like you and many other people do. I think I still don't believe that collapse is inevitable. I do very much believe that it's possible. And a lot of that also thanks to you. But yeah, I guess I guess I have some sort of hope or belief in humanity's ability to kind of course correct. And I think that our two kind of differing positions also made the video an interesting one, because we kind of sparred a little bit. And yeah, and so I'm here to spar a little bit with you again.
Fantastic. And just so everyone knows, I have no idea what you're going to be asking me.
That's
But
true, yeah.
one of the reasons I liked Aditi most as a journalist, and I might not have expressed this when she was here, because we did differ on quite a lot of fundamentals of the whole thing, was she really asked me questions that I had to not just think about it in the moment, but that stayed with me for quite a long time as well. And I had to evaluate or reevaluate. I think I probably came to more or less the same conclusions, but with the sort of security of being on for me personally, a much firmer footing, and that was a delight to have to endure. But really, it was. No, I enjoyed it very much. So thank you very much for coming back to put me over the coals once more.
Nice. I mean, I guess what was maybe a little bit difficult for you was because I am very insistent on breaking down ideas. That's and I think just the idea with the collapse lab is a little bit up in the air, and I think I was trying to like get you to give me specifics of what everything really means, so I could understand, but also people who are not kind of deep in this wormhole can understand. And so I'm going to ask you that to start off again, actually, like what can you maybe tell us what is the Collapse Laboratory and what your kind of purpose is with it?
Sure, no problem at all, happy to. So the Collapse Laboratory is me, I'm probably starting somewhat towards the end here, trying to kind of re-radicalize what I'm doing here. I very much enjoyed, actually, Martin said something, I think he said it to me before, it triggered a memory. I wrote it down, what did he say? An existential artistic performance, which I like because it sounds really great and who wouldn't want to be called that? But I don't know that that's actually desperately useful. And maybe it was useful more or less up to this year. But this year now for me has just gone so crazy that I don't think that's useful anymore. I want it to be more radical. And for me, being radical, and everyone chooses their own form of radical, but mine is to sort of occupy a mental space, a thought space that's beyond where most people are comfortable going. And I don't do that because I'm masochistic, though there are people who think that living here is entirely that. It's not because I'm actually quite comfortable out there in the far reaches. I feel comfortable there. I feel that I'm useful there, and I know that if I feel a little bit more comfortable there, then it should probably be me who is there. So the Collapse Laboratory is a specific attempt to answer two questions. The first one being, the absolute preset is that we are going to collapse. We've probably already started. There's nothing we can do about it. We're very glad that people are trying to do stuff about it and are trying to build from this side. But our concept is that it's going to start, it's going to happen, there's nothing we can do to stop it. So let's try to occupy a different mental space, which is to answer then two questions. The first of which is there anything that we can do that will lessen the amount of time that humanity will spend in collapse? And is there anything that we can do this side of the collapse that will help the people who ultimately, eventually, at some point in the future, will be charged with rebuilding? We're not particularly thinking too deeply about what collapse looks like. I mean, mostly because I'm sort of incapable, because it's all fluffy stuff up here and flowers, and collapse is going to be nasty. But also because other people are doing it. We're trying to look to the other side. So we've got a bunch of people here, and you've heard from some of them. It's just eye-openingly humbling to see the quality of thought that has come out today for everyone. I mean, just to be surrounded by people with such clarity of thought and such wonderful abilities to express it, and the generosity to share it with other people as well is just mind-blowing. It's been lovely. Thank you to everyone for being here, for taking part. Thank you to the audience as well. Enough thank yous. yeah, it's going to be pretty nasty, and we want to see if there's anything we can do the other side. Because rebuilding is inevitable, unless it gets really bad. And that's what we're going to try and look at. Yeah, so having the people here, and everyone's starting on a different level. I think everyone that was here and everyone that wanted to come here, everyone that's participated in any way, is of the belief that collapse is going to happen. It might very well have already started, and it's going to be nasty. But some people are a little bit about at that point. Some people are thinking of what it looks like in the middle of it, and some people are thinking about the end. So there's the sort of continuum of thought, the furthest reach of which is the answer to those two questions.
And so with the lab, I guess you're not sure, or you haven't decided where it's going to go or what your kind of aim is, but you're kind of developing it as it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely going to happen again next year. I think that's inevitable. I hadn't planned to do this sort of digital thing, which isn't supposed to like replicate the experience of being here, but it is supposed to show the advantage of it, which is to get disparate voices together to exchange and generously give of their mental capacity. But I hadn't planned to do this. This is in itself one of the outcomes of the laboratory, that it should be shared more widely. And exactly the same as the Barracks has been for the last 5 years, it is very much a voyage of discovery, fairly solid in the knowledge that it needs to exist, pretty open on the idea of what's it going to do then. And everyone who came this time, to come to the first one, where I'm as vague as I am, and the event itself was reasonably vague. Yeah. For everyone to come this time, I think it was incredibly brave of them. Next time will be easier.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you something similar, which is, I think you maybe first started thinking about starting this earlier this year, which was around the time that we met. What's changed since then, and where do you? Well, actually, how has it been for you?
How's it been? It's been good. I had some, on a purely practical level, I had some kind of setbacks in the garden, but they're now absolutely overflowing with food. The weather has been ridiculous, but it's been ridiculous in turns really hot and then really wet, which when you're growing potatoes isn't necessarily a bad thing. People came to an event that I really couldn't explain, and certainly didn't define very well. It's been a great year. On top of which, collapse has absolutely started. European and world politics are lurching even further to the right, and the graphs of everything coming out from every climate scientist are even more insane than we thought they were 3 months ago.
Yeah, that I can't disagree with. And what's changed in the last 6 months since you first started thinking about it until now?
At the Barracks?
With the collapse lab and the way you're thinking of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's become a little easier for people to come, because we got the first couple of sign-ups, and when you got 2 people signing up, then you'll get some more. It was originally intended to run for 3 weeks, and some people were here for the whole session, but we kind of targeted it towards the last week, where we got a whole range of different people. My big learning from it is if it goes like that next year, I'm going to need more rooms here, which is fine. I've got lots of rooms, they just don't have beds in them. But I mean, Ninka alluded to one of the things that happened was that food became unbelievably important to everyone. Everyone enjoyed the fact that you can take potatoes, cucumbers, and cabbages every single day and make something different in a different way with like minimum energy, minimum accoutrements in the kitchen. The guy who was here cooking, Jack, I told him in advance this was the world's hardest kitchen, and he's worked in Michelin kitchens. I think he thought I meant something else. It's difficult, it's slow, and nothing works, which certainly you don't get in Michelin's. We got a lot of focus on. There were certain topics that seemed to just keep cropping up, and I think there were probably one good one, one bad one. The good one was water. Sorry, the bad one was water. At the Barracks, everything is a scarce resource that is hard won and valuably recycled at the end. And everyone becoming very, very aware of their water usage was a real eye-opener for a lot of people. So that's the bad one. The good one was I'm so pleased that without any prompting from me, I swear, everyone who's spoken today has spoken in terms of happiness and joy and laughter, and we laughed a lot. Just making each other laugh, just with silly asides and some very rude jokes, which I won't go into here. It was a week of contrasts, that's for sure.
Yeah, it actually sounds like it was one large therapy session in a way, or like a group therapy session, which I guess, I mean, is that part of your, I mean, which sounds wonderful and actually sounds like something that is a really important part of the climate movement today, which is supporting this kind of community. And yeah, I guess is that one of your main like purposes or drivers behind this?
The main purpose is to figure stuff out, to find out, how to keep developing. I obviously love the group therapy session thing as well, but I think it's really important to realise that we're going to have to help the people who don't want to be part of our group as well. That they're going to suffer just as much, and I'm always a little bit cautious of sort of ever so slightly cultish climate movements, which I mean, happy doomerism even sounds like one. I can see the tendency.
That was going to be my next question to you, actually. My next serious question is: are you now a cult leader?
Am I now a cult leader? Anyone that comes here is left in absolutely no doubt whatsoever that would be a really bad idea. So I do hope not.
Well, you've got the beard for it.
I've always had that. I had that since I was 17, and it's not going now, not for no one. So it is fortunately turning white, which sort of, I guess, helps the guru status. But maybe I'll dye it black. That'd be cool.
It could look cool, actually. Yeah, I see that. So, well, when you were saying that, that your main purpose is to figure out how to kind of deal with the collapse or what comes after. Can you give us some insight into like maybe a couple of things that you came up with as a group, or something that came up surprised you that you weren't expecting, or that touched you in some way?
I mean, it was definitely the people. I think I thought at the start that we would produce something tangible of note. I realise now that that's probably not just hyper difficult, but also maybe not really what we should be doing. That we should be maybe working out how to increase vigilance of vigilance sounds like the wrong word. Our awareness and our compassion for everyone and everything around us. And if you can do that with good spirits and humour, that's probably the most important way of dealing with it that we've got.
And
I don't know if that was anything like what you were hoping for as an answer, but
well,
I don't know. I'm still processing very much. This is like officially the last day. This is the last action of it. I'm gonna need to sleep for a couple of days first, I think. But it's definitely been worthwhile. And I absolutely didn't know at the beginning that it would happen again next year. But now I totally know it needs to develop itself on its own.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to ask you where you see it going, but I guess you need a bit more time, and then we'll see it in one of your newsletters.
It'll probably be in the newsletters, yeah, at some point when I run out of other things to say. I do think at the minute it's probably important that it's here. So I can't see it sort of being franchised and deliberately trying to expand it or anything. Deliberately trying to encourage other people to turn it into a mass movement. I think slowly is probably the way. Remains to see how much time we've got. But yeah.
How big would you like it to be?
That's the thing, isn't it? That's it. That is like my next idea or the next concern is that it turns into something that is its name as opposed to something that is actually useful, which is why I use the word franchise. I mean, obviously, I don't consider a sort of McDonald's franchise type model, But when the name is the thing, I think you've got to be a bit cautious. So I think I'd like to hold on to it for a bit, just to make sure it does stay manageably small, but a bit bigger would be fine. I don't think there was anyone here who didn't. I think it was Ninka, was it probably, who mentioned the forest walks. I don't think there was anyone here who didn't go on the forest walk with at least every other person, at least once. And not in sort of big groups and organised outings. It was just like, oh, has anyone seen so and so? Oh no, they're off in the forest with so and so, hunting for mushrooms that aren't there because the weather's been rubbish. And I think as soon as you have too many people and too many connections, then you're going to lose the nucleus of what it is. Yeah, one day maybe it'll go beyond that, but not for a little while yet.
Yeah, I guess because I guess you do want to have more people talking and thinking about these kind of things, but at the same time, you don't want to corrupt what you have going on.
I want everyone to talk to everyone else, and my deal with myself from the beginning of it was that I was going to try and take as much of a backseat as I could. I was always available for anyone that wanted to speak to me, but on the whole cult leader thing, I certainly didn't want to, stand up in front of people and everyone wear white clothes and adopt some sort of hand signal and gender flexion or whatever. So I think I did it. I think I did okay on keeping out of it, and I think we could probably get, I don't know, maybe we aim for 20 people next year. I think 20 people is still enough people that everybody talks to everybody else, and genuine interchange occurs. Not breaking up into little groups too much.
The only other question I had for you was, did you change your mind on anything?
Did I change my mind on anything? No, I don't think so. No, we're still doomed. I'm still not too pissed off about it.
Happy doomer?
I'm absolutely still a happy doomer, yeah. I mean, Michaela, for example, I don't think I've ever disagreed with the word she says. But sometimes she has a sort of clarity in just a couple of words here and there that really resonates. And I think it hasn't really occurred to me before that if you want to fix something, you absolutely have to fix everything. And I think getting people together to think about that in a sort of open and free environment. How do we fix absolutely everything? Well, the answer is probably smash absolutely everything. I think that would be an interesting line to go down for sure.
Well, then you need a bigger beard.
Definitely had new avenues opened without really changing any conclusions. I think. But I think that's worth more for me anyway. I've been thinking about this for a hell of a long time. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I find your work super interesting, and we look forward to your newsletter when you have your reflections in these few days. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this. And yes, it was enormously short notice. I think I'm going to bring Sam back in. So we'll click that button there.
Hello. Don't worry, he only roped me into this 2 days ago. So
was it that recently? And do you know, Sam? Do we have questions waiting for us in the chat?
So I was looking. Yeah, bring everyone in. I think that's a good way to finish up.
Are you able to stay with us for a while, or I know you have things to do today? You're staying? Jolly good. All right, let's get everyone in. Is that everyone?
That is everyone now. Yeah. So thanks everyone, and I have loved listening to you all. I took some notes, and I just wanted to summarize, and maybe I'll start with the first question in terms of is this an accurate summary of what I found? There were common themes throughout all your talks and what you were touching on. And coming out the back of this week of the Collapse Laboratory, what would you say the common themes are that you felt? The themes I picked up on from your talk were like empathy and compassion, right? So everyone touched on that topic in what they were saying. Keeping positive and humor, like making sure you don't get fatigued by all the slamming of the news and everything out there. Awareness, so you guys touched on the water usage, which Jack has been commenting on in the comments. I think he's the chef, right? That was there. And also food calories, right? How much effort it takes to actually grow a piece of food, right? You actually become aware of that when you go into an environment like the Barracks, which is eye-opening for a lot of people. A lot of people don't even know how to recognize what their food looks like when it's growing, let alone how much effort it takes to grow it. And community, right? So everyone's touched on the themes of community for support, ideas, discussions, stories. That's been very strong throughout all your presentations. Are there any themes or things that you found come out of the discussions that you had with each other over this past week that are important to you or I didn't mention then?
It was actually Jack, if I can pick this one up, and maybe other people can jump in. It was Jack, since we're talking about him, and at all, I'm sure, who I know he came with 3 things in mind, which was air, water, and soil, which is, in 3 words, almost a summary of what you just said, really. I don't think anyone had considered all 3 of them in their totality before, like the relationship between them. Well, it sounds so blindingly obvious, but the 3 of those all together, and it turned out that the one we focused on more than anything else was water.
Okay, so clearly no one tried to dig a hole at the Barracks, because if they did, they would be talking about the soil.
They would be talking about the soil. My favourite sort of anecdote of that is when I burnt my hand. You can't dig up fresh soil here. Like if you want to do a fresh bit of a vegetable patch or something, you can't dig it up with a fork. You need to dig it up with a pickaxe, because it is just rocks. And there was one time I'd been whacking away at a bit of new soil where we actually sowed oats that year. And I just put the pickaxe down to do something, picked it up again. By the end, I'd been whacking into the soil and it was red hot, and I burnt my hand just from the repeated motion of smacking it against the ground. Yeah, kids, if you're gonna do something like this, have a little test dig somewhere out the back where you think you're going to put your vegetables.
I'm seeing no actual questions in the chat. There's some comments. So Ben mentioned, thanks, Michaela. Definitely agree that ignorance of unmeasured empathetic labor and maintenance is bad for, hang on, I just lost my place, for all of us, and needs to change, so we know what to value to save ourselves. I don't know if you guys have access to the chat, but yeah, there's just some. Okay, here's a question from Ben. He heard me calling him out. From your experiences over the last few weeks at the Collapse, will you do at the Collapse Lab? Will you do anything different in your daily life?
Can I broaden that out a bit? Because of the 6 of us here, it's just me and Ninka who are actually participating physically here at the lab. So, I mean, in knowing about it and stuff, or can I change the question a bit? I think it's sort of, thank you. I think it's fairly obvious that Collapse is in some form underway. Does this knowledge change anything in your daily life? I would be very interested to know. It also says, or advise those you know to do anything differently. Has anyone noticed themselves saying different new things to other people?
I'm sorry. I just want to add some not so constructive or positive perspective to that, because also I was talking a lot about how this can change your perspective and how you can set your priorities and everything. I have to admit that recently I became really, really tired, and like physically and psychologically, and also I'm happy sometimes. It's fun, but I feel like this whole topic is sometimes really weighing on me, and I feel a great sense of helplessness sometimes, and I feel that it can really be hard to communicate this with people who don't want to deal with this at all or all the time. So yeah, but even more I appreciate to the attempt to connect and come together to talk about this. But maybe it is important to say that sometimes it just makes me feel tired, and I'm not always like drawing these very intellectual, enthusiastic conclusions. Yeah, I need to take a break, and I'm doing a lot of solutions journalism right now, which also seems kind of absurd sometimes, because I feel like I always have to talk like we will be saved, but I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions. What gives you hope? Like, how do you address these feelings of helplessness or fatigue? Is there anything specific that you do? Like, personally, I find that I go into nature, right? So that really revives me. There's certain areas that I have that I go to. But is there anything specific that you guys do to lift yourself out of that when you're feeling that?
Michaela, I bet you've got something.
No, I just had this thought that the answer is in the pigs' names. It's demagogy, beauty, and nutslessness.
For me, I have to say it's to come back to the bodily experience, and for me, this is martial arts. I was thinking a lot about what Michaela was saying, and I would love to have a discussion about this another time, because I have a lot of open questions regarding this, and I feel my approach is maybe a kind of masculine. I don't know, but I
we
really
need the
feel,
boys on board.
yeah, like I just think like what does it mean? What does it mean if my answer to my helplessness is to reconnect to my body by hitting something really hard? But I also train with women who seem to.
I can tell you, I do the same.
Yeah, but I have to say this helps, because it's a lot of mind fuck going on in this topic, and I feel it like it helps a great deal to come back to something where you can reconnect to your body, and also some like small things where you see direct results, like as silly as it sounds, but cleaning my room and preparing for friends helps a great deal to get over what I read in the news, maybe.
Yeah. I've got a question for Ben in the chat from Juan. Do you think the Barracks has the potential to become a small, self-sustainable community? And if so, how many people do you think it could sustain?
Okay. Yes. We're pretty much completely self-contained. The plan from the beginning has always been nothing in, nothing out. It's clearly not entirely possible at the minute, and we do live in the society we live in, so I don't feel any particular guilt about using the outside world when I need it. But the community aspect thing of it, let's go a different way. According to the United Nations, you need about 650 square meters to feed a vegan. Vegetarian 10 times as much. Meat eater, just ridiculous amounts of space. So let's assume veganism anyway. The Barracks is vegan. Everyone who comes here is vegan for at least the time that they do spend here. I'm not sure. I think that 650 is sustainable. 650 meters is sustainable over the long term. I suspect it's probably a bit closer to 1,000, and especially if you want, lots of tree fruits and things, which I do. Peaches, incidentally, today are looking lekker, and there's at least 200 of them on one tree, and I am going to be eating nothing but peaches for the rest of August and much of September. This beautiful, I'm waffling. There's this beautiful dichotomy of sort of poverty and great riches at the Barracks. We have no money, but we've got a hell of a lot of peaches. It's a bizarre thing. The more people you're trying to feed, the more efficient you can be with the space. If you want grains for your bread and whiskey or whatever you're going to do with your grains, it's way more efficient to grow those over a larger space. So if we go for, say, let's say about 1,000 square meters per person, I've got about, if I absolutely maxed it out of 55,000 square meters here, I've probably got about 4,000 of actual growable space. So you're not coming here. There's basically enough food for 4 people. I think I can be more efficient than that. I think I could probably sustain maybe 12. But
are you including the pigs in that calculation?
No. Let's see what happens with complete collapse and pigs dying of old age, and hope that they're not wildly distant from each other. I mean, my pigs now hold the group title of probably the oldest pigs in Germany, quite possibly in Europe. Pigs get slaughtered at 9 months old. Mine are now 5, and they're still kids, really. But the natural life expectancy of a pig is about 20 years. These buggers who get fed by hand twice a day every 12 hours for the last 5 years without break.
But do you think they would make it in the forest? I mean, that's a theoretical life expectancy.
Yeah, no, I mean,
it's not the natural life expectancy.
Well, no, the natural life expectancy of a pig is about, well, it's not natural, is it? No, I mean, the natural life expectancy is about 20 years. Mine will probably live a bit longer, just to annoy me. In the forest, and I have thought about this, because they do tend to escape quite often, and I'm still bringing them back. One day I'm just going to let them go, I think. I strongly suspect Tony, Sir Anthony Marmalade Nutsless, he has no nuts. There was an Austrian film company here who translated him as Anthony Orner Eier, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. Germanification of his name. He's not got long in the forest. I mean, there is a very large, very healthy population of wild boars in the forest. There's probably about 40 in the family. He's not getting in. He's a testicleless male boar. He's just another mouth to feed. The girls, they might be adopted into the family. I don't know. Or the 3 of them might sort of go off and try and do it on their own. They're pretty good at digging stuff up. They'll find roots and food and stuff, but they have been hand-fed for their entire lives. I don't think they'd make it in the forest.
But on that note, I'll just remind everyone of the GoFundMe page to help feed those pigs, so that Ben can have more people at the Barracks.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we are past our intended finish time. I don't know if you want to keep going or if you want to wrap it up. There's not any more questions in the chat. There's the comments, which I do encourage you all to go and have a look at afterwards, but there's no more questions that I can see. What do you want to do, Ben? Do you want to...
I want to say thank you to absolutely everybody for being in the chat, for coming, for listening, and most importantly, to everyone here for taking part, and especially you, Sam. You have filled in all of my inadequacies absolutely wonderfully in planning and clicking buttons. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who came to the laboratory. I know a lot of them are watching this now. And yeah, let's see you all here next year.
Thanks, everyone. It was really inspirational, and I look forward to meeting you all.
We'll do it. We'll make a date.
Yes.
Probably at Centre Pompadour. They've got hot water.
Thank you.
Yeah,
everybody come.
Bye, everyone.
Excellent. So on that note, we'll wrap up.
Bye.
And thanks to all the audience, and have a good evening, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.